First story, The Mike Oram Case, 2005 UK. The drone of the jet engines was a familiar comfort, a white noise blanket that usually lulled me into a pre-holiday doze. This time, however, somewhere over the vast expanse of the Atlantic, a subtle shift in the cabin's atmosphere pricked at my senses. It wasn't turbulence, it was something far more unsettling. A faint ethereal luminescence began to seep in through the cabin windows, an otherworldly radiance that defied earthly explanation. Initially, I dismissed it as a trick of the light, the high-altitude sun playing games with my vision. Yet, as the glow intensified, morphing from a subtle shimmer to an almost palpable presence, a cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Around me, the other passengers remained blissfully unaware, lost in their in-flight entertainment or hushed conversations. It was as if Sarah and I were the only ones privy to this unfolding anomaly, trapped in a silent bubble of growing unease. The light pulsed, an unnatural heartbeat resonating against the backdrop of the mundane flight. Then an abrupt, inexplicable void swallowed time itself. One moment, the world outside was bathed in that eerie glow. The next, the cabin lights flickered back to normal. The gentle hum of the engines resumed its monotonous rhythm. But something fundamental had shifted. Hours, or what felt like hours, were unaccounted for, erased from the collective memory of the flight. We exchanged bewildered glances, Sarah's eyes mirroring my own confusion and a dawning sense of dread. Our memories of the intervening period were fragmented, fuzzy at the edges, like a dream rapidly fading upon waking. Yet, beneath the surface of our bewildered normality, a chilling certainty began to take root. Something profound had occurred during that lost time, something that transcended the boundaries of rational explanation. It wasn't merely a flight anomaly, it was an intrusion, a silent abduction into a reality we were only beginning to comprehend. And the echoes of that encounter, the fragmented memories, the telepathic whispers, were just starting to surface, hinting at a horror far beyond the confines of our earthly understanding. Michael Oram, a lecturer in history at a London university, was, by all accounts, an ordinary man. He found solace in the predictable rhythms of academia, the dusty scent of old books, and the quiet evenings spent with his wife, Sarah, a graphic designer with a sharp wit and an even sharper eye for detail. Their life was comfortable, perhaps a little too routine, hence the planned holiday to Egypt, a desperate attempt to inject some spontaneity back into their days. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, had meticulously planned every detail from the best snorkeling spots in Sharm el-Sheikh to the most authentic falafel stalls in Cairo. Mike, while appreciative, harbored a quiet skepticism about packaged tours, preferring the serendipity of unplanned adventures. Their departure from Gatwick was as unremarkable as any other summer flight. The airport bustle, the obligatory security checks, the slightly overpriced coffee. It was the familiar prelude to a week of sun and ancient wonders. Settled into their window seats, overlooking the sprawling tarmac, they were a portrait of comfortable companionship, years of shared experiences etched into the easy silences between them. Mike, always observant, noted the mundane details of the cabin, the faded upholstery, the weary smiles of the cabin crew, the hum of the pre-flight checks. He was a man who found comfort in the tangible, in the historical record, in the verifiable facts of the past. When the unnatural glow began to permeate the cabin, It was Mike who first noticed, his academic mind instinctively searching for rational explanations. He dismissed lightning, aurora borealis, any terrestrial phenomenon that could account for the strange luminescence. Sarah, initially focused on her pre-flight novel, was slower to register the anomaly, her world more grounded in the immediate and practical. Their contrasting personalities, usually a source of balance in their relationship, now amplified their individual responses to the inexplicable event. As the light intensified and time fractured, their initial motivations diverged. Sarah, rooted in the desire for a normal holiday, clung to the hope that it was all a temporary aberration, a bizarre but ultimately explainable atmospheric phenomenon. Mike, however, driven by his historical training and an innate curiosity for the unknown, felt a darker premonition, a sense that they had stumbled upon something profoundly unsettling, something that defied the comfortable boundaries of their known world. This flight to Egypt, intended as an escape from routine, was about to become a journey into the heart of an unimaginable and terrifying mystery. The plane returned to normalcy as abruptly as it had vanished, yet the air crackled with unspoken dread. Passengers stirred, oblivious, but for Mike and Sarah, the world had subtly fractured. Memories flickered, cold light, metallic whispers, a sense of invasive observation, hinting at a violation far beyond comprehension. The holiday destination now felt a mocking illusion, for the true journey had just begun, a descent into a terrifying, alien reality hidden beneath the veneer of their ordinary lives. The initial days after the flight were shrouded in a disquieting normalcy, a fragile veneer over a churning undercurrent of dread. Mike's primary goal became uncovering the truth of the lost hours. Driven by his academic training, he initially approached it as a puzzle to be solved, poring over flight logs, weather reports, anything to find a rational explanation for the light and the missing time. Sarah, while equally disturbed, yearned to bury the experience, to salvage their holiday and return to their familiar life. Her initial goal was simply to ignore it and move forward, a stark contrast to Mike's relentless pursuit of answers. Their hotel in Hurghada, initially envisioned as a haven of relaxation, became a stage for their growing unease. The vibrant colors of the Red Sea, the exotic sense of the market, felt jarringly dissonant with the cold, sterile images that flickered at the edges of Mike's mind. Sleep offered no respite. Instead, it became a battleground of fragmented nightmares, glimpses of cold metallic surfaces and shadowy figures. The first obstacle was the frustratingly elusive nature of their memories, like trying to grasp water with clenched fists. They would try to piece together the events, but the missing hours remained a frustrating blank space, a void that fueled their anxieties. The dynamic between Mike and Sarah began to shift. Sarah's initial pragmatism clashed with Mike's increasingly obsessive quest for answers. Their easy companionship eroded, replaced by strained silences and worried glances. A subtle subplot emerged in their unspoken fear of each other's reactions. Mike, hesitant to fully reveal the extent of his growing dread, and Sarah afraid of pushing him further down a path she didn't understand. The sun-drenched beaches and ancient ruins of Egypt became a backdrop to their internal turmoil, the vibrant landscape a stark contrast to the encroaching darkness of their shared secret. The first significant external obstacle arose upon their return to London. Seeking answers, Mike tentatively mentioned the strange light and the missing time to a colleague at the university. a professor of astrophysics known for his open-mindedness. However, even this seemingly receptive individual dismissed Mike's experience as jet lag and holiday stress, advising him to relax and forget about it. This dismissal, mirroring the broader societal skepticism toward such phenomena, solidified Mike's sense of isolation, pushing him further into his solitary search for the truth and deeper into the unsettling realization that he and Sarah were facing something utterly beyond the scope of conventional understanding. The fragile normalcy shattered one ordinary evening at home. Mike, restless and unable to shake off the lingering unease, was immersed in online forums dedicated to unexplained aerial phenomena. Sarah, attempting to create a semblance of routine, was preparing dinner in the kitchen, the clatter of pots and pans a mundane counterpoint to the growing tension in the air. Suddenly, as Mike scrolled through a thread detailing similar missing time experiences reported by airline passengers, a word jumped out at him. Implants. A cold dread washed over him, a primal fear resonating deep within his bones. The word triggered something. Not a rational thought, but a visceral memory, a sudden, overwhelming sensory overload. One moment, he was in his living room. The next, he was back on the cold, metallic table, bathed in blinding white light. The antiseptic smell assaulted his nostrils, the low hum vibrated through his body, and the chilling touch of cold instruments pressed against his skin. He saw the shadowy figures leaning over him, their large dark eyes reflecting the sterile light, their silent forms moving with an unnerving grace. The sensation was not just visual, it was tactile, auditory, olfactory, a full sensory flashback that ripped him from the present and plunged him back into the terrifying void of the missing hours. He gasped, recoiling from the laptop as if burned, his heart hammering against his ribs. The metallic taste, a phantom sensation he had intermittently experienced since the flight, flooded his mouth, acrid and real. Sarah rushed in, alarmed by his sudden distress, her eyes widening at the pallor of his face, the sweat beading on his forehead. "Mike, what is it? What's happening?" Her voice was laced with panic, mirroring the terror in his own eyes. He couldn't speak, couldn't articulate the fragmented images that still clung to his consciousness like shards of glass. But the flashback, unlike the fleeting glimpses before, was undeniable, visceral, a terrifying confirmation that something profound and deeply disturbing had happened during those lost hours. The incident propelled him past the point of mere intellectual curiosity. Now it was a desperate need for answers, a primal urge to understand the violation he had experienced, to reclaim the stolen time, and to confront the terrifying reality that had intruded upon his ordinary life. The status quo was irrevocably broken. The main conflict, the fight for understanding and perhaps survival against an unknown force, had begun in earnest. The immediate consequence of the intense flashback was a stark shift in Sarah's demeanor. Initially skeptical, witnessing Mike's visceral reaction forced her to confront the undeniable reality that something profoundly disturbing had occurred. Her protective instincts flared, but her fear now intertwined with a desperate desire to help Mike, even if she didn't fully understand what he was going through. The challenge became not just understanding the mystery, but navigating the emotional fallout, the growing chasm of fear that threatened to engulf them both. Mike, now grappling with the undeniable memory of the examination, felt a renewed urgency, a burning need to verify the implant suggestion. His motivation shifted from intellectual curiosity to a more visceral, personal drive, the need to reclaim agency over his own body, to understand what, if anything, had been physically done to him. He started researching medical anomalies, seeking information on unusual metallic objects detected in the body, a desperate and perhaps futile attempt to find tangible evidence to support his fragmented recollections. This new quest became an all-consuming obsession, further isolating him from Sarah and the remnants of their normal life. A new challenge emerged in the form of societal disbelief. Venturing cautiously into online communities dedicated to UFO phenomena, Mike encountered a mix of validation and ridicule. While some shared similar experiences, others dismissed them as delusional or attention-seeking. This further complicated his search for answers, highlighting the inherent difficulty in proving something so far outside the accepted boundaries of reality. The world at large remained resolutely oblivious, a stark contrast to the terrifying truth Mike was beginning to uncover. Into this swirling vortex of fear and uncertainty, a new character entered their lives. Dr. Alistair Gray, a parapsychologist mentioned in one of the online forums. Described as a researcher who approached these phenomena with both scientific rigor and open-mindedness, Dr. Gray represented a potential lifeline, a chance for Mike to find validation and perhaps guidance. Sarah, initially wary of further fueling Mike's obsession, saw a glimmer of hope in a professional opinion, someone who might offer rational insight, or at least a more structured approach to dealing with Mike's escalating trauma. Dr. Gray's introduction marked the beginning of a new subplot, the search for external validation and professional help, a path fraught with its own set of challenges and uncertainties. Mike's appointment with Dr. Gray marked a turning point, yet it also escalated the tension. Dr. Gray, while initially reassuring, introduced a new layer of unease. His professional demeanor masked a palpable intensity, a sense that he knew more than he revealed, hinting at a wider, more organized field of research into these phenomena than Mike had imagined. The stakes escalated as Dr. Gray suggested hypnotic regression, a procedure that promised to unlock deeper memories, but also carried the risk of confronting even more terrifying truths. Sarah, torn between wanting to support Mike and fearing the potential psychological damage, found herself in a painful dilemma. Her anxiety mounting with each step Mike took towards uncovering the unknown. The subplot of societal disbelief deepened as Mike, emboldened by Dr. Gray's apparent validation, tentatively shared fragments of his experience with a close friend. The reaction was not supportive understanding, but thinly veiled concern and awkward dismissal, reinforcing Mike's isolation and Sarah's growing fear of social ostracization. This rejection amplified their internal tension, pushing them further into their private world of fear and uncertainty, and making them question who they could truly trust. The intertwined subplots of professional investigation and social isolation tightened the narrative knot, increasing the pressure on Mike and Sarah and propelling them towards a potentially devastating confrontation with the truth. The hypnotic regression session with Dr. Gray proved to be the pivotal moment. The flood of repressed memories, the visceral recollection of the abduction, irrevocably altered Mike. He was no longer simply seeking answers. He was confronting a terrifying truth that redefined his reality. This confrontation, while traumatizing, also ignited a fierce resolve within him. The initial academic curiosity transformed into a desperate need for agency, a determination to understand the violation he had endured and to reclaim some semblance of control over his life. This shift marked a significant character transformation, revealing an inner strength forged in the crucible of unimaginable horror. Sarah, witnessing Mike's raw emotional outpouring after the session, underwent her own transformation. Her initial fear and skepticism began to recede, replaced by a profound empathy and unwavering support. The shared trauma, though experienced differently, became an unlikely bond, solidifying their relationship in the face of external and internal pressures. However, this newfound understanding was laced with a growing dread. The revealed memories painted a terrifying picture, hinting at an alien agenda far beyond human comprehension. The stage was now set for the climax, the impending confrontation with the full weight of the abduction experience and the terrifying unknown that lay ahead. In the immediate days following the hypnotic regression, a sense of uneasy calm settled over Mike and Sarah. The raw shock had subsided, replaced by a grim acceptance of their altered reality. The lingering fear of the implant became a focal point. Driven by a desperate need for tangible proof, Mike sought a private medical scan, a minor confrontation with the skepticism of the medical establishment. The results were inconclusive, showing nothing overtly alien, yet a nagging ambiguity remained, fueling his paranoia and leaving the implant question unresolved, a subtle foreshadowing of potential future discoveries. Dr. Gray, now a confirmed ally, became a more active presence in their lives. He shared fragmented case studies, hinting at a pattern of similar abduction experiences, creating a disturbing sense of connection to a larger, unseen phenomenon. He spoke of potential countermeasures, vague and untested, but offered a sliver of hope, solidifying their alliance against the unknown. Sarah, witnessing Dr. Gray's earnestness and expertise, began to trust him, her protective instincts shifting towards active participation in Mike's quest for understanding. A minor plot resolution emerged in their approach to the outside world. The painful dismissal from Mike's friend and the general societal disbelief led them to retreat inwards. They decided to cease seeking external validation, realizing that their truth was too profound, too alien for casual acceptance. This withdrawal, while isolating, paradoxically strengthened their bond, creating a united front against a world that would likely never understand. Subtle foreshadowing began to permeate their daily lives. Unexplained electrical disturbances in their apartment, fleeting shadows in their peripheral vision, a persistent feeling of being watched, all hinted at an intensification of the alien presence, a sense that they were not forgotten, that the abduction was not an isolated incident. These unsettling occurrences served to ratchet up the tension, preparing the stage for the major confrontation, the looming climax that promised to shatter what remained of their pre-abduction reality and force them to confront the full, terrifying implications of their experience. The resolutions were minor, tactical retreats in the face of a larger war, and the alliances were fragile shields against an enemy they could barely comprehend, all paving the way for a climax where the stakes would be impossibly high. The final days leading up to the anticipated climax were a blur of heightened anxiety. The subtle foreshadowing intensified, transforming into overt and unsettling occurrences. The electrical disturbances escalated from flickering lights to full power outages, plunging their apartment into darkness, amplifying their vulnerability. The fleeting shadows solidified, becoming distinct, fleeting glimpses of tall, slender figures at the periphery of their vision, testing the limits of their sanity and pushing them to the edge of panic. The implant fear became an unbearable obsession for Mike. He began experiencing phantom pains, sharp twinges in his abdomen and head, convincing himself that the alien object was activating, preparing for some unknown, terrifying purpose. This heightened paranoia became a final obstacle, threatening to consume him completely, blurring the lines between reality and delusion and straining his already fragile mental state. Sarah, witnessing Mike's descent, faced her ultimate challenge: to hold on to her own sanity while desperately trying to anchor Mike to reality, her emotional stakes reaching their peak as she fought to save not just their relationship, but Mike himself. Dr. Gray, sensing the approaching climax, became more insistent, his demeanor shifting from cautious researcher to urgent advisor. He revealed a risky, experimental technique, a form of counter-frequency intended to disrupt any potential alien influence. A desperate gamble that could either liberate Mike or have devastating consequences. This intervention aligned the narrative threads: the implant fear, Dr. Gray's expertise, and the escalating sense of alien presence, converging them all on this one high-stakes decision. The final tension hung heavy in the air, a palpable sense of impending crisis, ensuring that all narrative threads were taut, ready to snap, propelling Mike and Sarah towards a climax that would determine not just the fate of their understanding, but perhaps their very survival. The night of Dr. Gray's experimental counter-frequency was charged with a palpable tension. The device, humming ominously in the dimly lit apartment, cast flickering shadows that danced like alien silhouettes. As Dr. Gray activated the machine, Mike felt an immediate, searing pain in his abdomen, a localized agony that confirmed the implant's presence. This was the confrontation, not with beings of flesh and blood, but with the cold, technological residue they had left behind. The battle was internal, a struggle against an unseen invader within his own body. Waves of nausea and dizziness washed over Mike as the frequency pulsed through him. Visions flooded his mind, fragmented images of the examination table, the cold gray faces, the telepathic whispers now distorted into agonizing screeches. He cried out, collapsing to his knees, Sarah rushing to his side, her hand a desperate anchor in the storm of his senses. This was the ultimate test of their bond. Her unwavering presence, a stark contrast to the alien coldness that threatened to consume him. Then, as abruptly as it began, the pain subsided. The visions receded. A strange sense of lightness, of emptiness, replaced the agonizing pressure in his abdomen. The implant, it seemed, was gone, neutralized by the counter-frequency. Exhausted but strangely liberated, Mike looked at Sarah, tears streaming down his face, a raw mixture of relief and lingering terror in his eyes. The immediate threat was resolved, the physical violation perhaps undone. In the aftermath, a fragile peace settled over their lives. The nightmares lessened, the anxiety receded to a dull ache. Their relationship, scarred but strengthened, emerged from the crucible of terror, a testament to their resilience. They had faced the unimaginable and survived, forever changed, forever aware of the fragile boundary between the known and the terrifyingly unknown. But the silence is never truly silent. The echoes of the abduction linger, a constant reminder of a reality beyond human comprehension. The question remains, are we truly alone? Look to the skies, question the unexplained, For the truth, as Mike Oram discovered, may be far stranger and closer than we dare to imagine. Life after the counter-frequency treatment wasn't a return to normalcy, but a navigation of a new normal. The fear didn't vanish, but it transformed, becoming a quiet companion rather than a screaming tormentor. Mike carried the weight of his experience, the indelible mark of the abduction shaping his perspective, imbuing his historical lectures with a newfound urgency, a subtle undercurrent of the unknown that resonated with his students. Sarah, too, was changed, her art gaining a darker, more introspective edge, exploring themes of vulnerability and resilience in the face of the inexplicable. Their bond, tested to its breaking point, emerged stronger, forged in the shared crucible of terror and understanding. Years passed. The Mike Oram case faded from online forums, becoming another whispered legend in the vast tapestry of unexplained phenomena. Yet, for Mike and Sarah, the memory remained vivid, a constant reminder of the reality that lurked just beyond the veil of the ordinary. They learned to live with the uncertainty, to find solace in their shared experience, and to appreciate the fragile beauty of their earthly existence against the backdrop of cosmic mystery. Their fate was not neatly tied up, but open-ended, a life lived with a profound awareness of the universe's vastness and the limitations of human understanding. Second story: Alien Abduction in Wilderness. The scent of pine needles and damp earth usually brought a sense of calm, a balm to the soul weary from city life. Our escape into the wilderness was meticulously planned, a weekend carved out for peace, for disconnecting from the relentless hum of civilization and reconnecting with something primal and real. Gary, ever the optimist, had envisioned nights filled with laughter around a crackling fire, stories whispered under a blanket of stars, and the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that only comes from exhaustion earned in the crisp mountain air. I, more pragmatic, sought the quiet, the solitude, a temporary reprieve from the anxieties that seemed to cling to me like shadows in the urban landscape. We chose a secluded spot, miles from any paved road, a place where the only sounds were supposed to be the rustle of leaves and the murmur of a hidden stream. The day unfolded exactly as we hoped, a tapestry of hiking trails conquered, jokes shared, and the comforting weight of backpacks shared at day's end. As dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, we built our fire, the flames leaping to life against the encroaching darkness, casting dancing shadows that played tricks on the eye. Marshmallows browned over the embers, filling the air with a sweet, nostalgic aroma, a scent that usually evoked childhood innocence, a stark contrast to the dread that was about to descend. The first anomaly was subtle, a flicker of movement high above, easily dismissed as a satellite or a distant airplane. But it lingered, grew larger, defying conventional explanation. It was silent, impossibly so, a stark black shape against the darkening twilight, an unnatural geometry cutting through the organic chaos of the natural world. A cold unease began to creep in, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, a primal warning that something was profoundly wrong. Gary, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a nervous stillness, pointed, his voice hushed with a mixture of awe and fear. "What is that?" And then it descended, slowly, deliberately, like a predator circling its prey. The laughter died in our throats, replaced by a cold knot of terror that tightened with each passing second. We were frozen, transfixed, our idyllic escape dissolving into a nightmare as a beam of light pierced the darkness, an ethereal spotlight that locked us in its unholy glare. The wilderness, our sanctuary, had become a stage for something terrifyingly unknown, and we were unwilling actors in a drama not of this world. The wilderness we chose was not just any forest. It was a cathedral of ancient pines and whispering aspens, a place where sunlight filtered in dappled patterns onto a carpet of moss and decaying leaves. The air hummed with the quiet symphony of nature, the rustling of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the distant call of a bird echoing through the valleys. We had sought out the Deschutes National Forest in Oregon, drawn by its reputation for pristine beauty and untamed solitude, a place where the veil between worlds seemed thin and the whispers of forgotten lore lingered in the shadows. Little did we know how truly thin that veil was and what kind of ancient lore we were about to encounter. I'm Terry, a college student perpetually burdened by the weight of exams and the anxieties of an uncertain future. City life, with its constant noise and relentless pace, had begun to feel like a cage, suffocating my spirit. I craved silence, space, a chance to breathe without the pressure of expectations or the constant reminders of my own inadequacies. The wilderness represented freedom, escape, a temporary shedding of the skin of my everyday self, and a chance to reconnect with something more fundamental, more authentic within me. This trip was more than just a weekend getaway. It was a desperate search for respite, a fragile hope for rejuvenation before being plunged back into the academic grind. Gary, my roommate and closest friend, was the antithesis of my introspective nature. He was the life of every party, radiating an infectious optimism that could brighten even the dreariest of days. While I often retreated into books and quiet contemplation, Gary thrived on social interaction and adventure. He was the one who initially proposed this camping trip, his enthusiasm contagious, his promise of epic campfire stories and unforgettable stargazing, finally convincing me to abandon my usual weekend routine of study and solitude. Our friendship was an unlikely but enduring balance, his extroverted energy complementing my introverted tendencies, creating a dynamic that was both supportive and challenging. We were an odd pair, drawn together by shared classes and a mutual need for companionship. In the often isolating environment of college life, Gary, with his easy charm and boundless energy, could navigate social situations with effortless grace, while I, with my quiet attentiveness and analytical mind, offered a different kind of support, a listening ear, and a grounded perspective. Our personalities, though contrasting, were interwoven, creating a bond that felt both comfortable and deeply reliable. This weekend in the wilderness was, in many ways, a testament to our friendship, a shared adventure into the unknown, a seeking of solace and connection in the vastness of nature. The light intensified, not just blinding but searing, feeling like it was burning away layers of my being. Then a voice, not heard with ears, but within my skull, cold and alien, echoed a single chilling phrase. Candidate selected. Selected. For what? The question clawed at my sanity as the world dissolved into white, a horrifying premonition blooming in my mind that this wasn't random, it was intentional and terrifyingly personal. Disorientation clung to me like a shroud as I blinked, awake. The campfire was reduced to gray ashes, cold and lifeless under the pale light of dawn. The air, which should have been crisp and invigorating, felt heavy, tainted with an unseen residue of the night's terror. I was lying on the damp earth, tangled in my sleeping bag, a throbbing ache behind my eyes and a metallic taste coating my tongue. The familiar sounds of the forest, birdsong, rustling leaves, were muted, as if even nature itself was holding its breath, waiting. Panic fled when I realized Gary wasn't there. His sleeping bag lay empty, carelessly unrolled, beside mine. His usual boisterous snoring was replaced by an unnerving silence that pressed against my ears, amplifying the growing dread in my gut. "Gary," I called out, my voice hoarse and weak, swallowed by the vastness of the woods. Only the echoing silence answered, a chilling testament to his absence. My initial goal became crystal clear, brutally simple: find Gary. But the wilderness, moments ago our sanctuary, now felt hostile, indifferent. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat. Every rustle of leaves sounded like approaching footsteps, or something else entirely. My body felt sluggish, heavy, my mind clouded with a strange fog, the lingering effects of whatever had happened during the lost hours of the night. I was alone, vulnerable, and utterly unprepared to navigate this growing nightmare. The idyllic weekend escape had morphed into a desperate search, the laughter and camaraderie replaced by a gnawing fear for my friend and a chilling premonition of the unknown. I stumbled to my feet, legs shaky, and began to search the immediate campsite, calling out Gary's name again and again, my voice cracking with increasing desperation. The familiar landmarks of our chosen spot, the creek, the towering pine, the moss-covered rock, seemed subtly altered, imbued with an unsettling strangeness. There was no sign of Gary, no trace of struggle, just the unnerving emptiness of his absence and the echoing silence of the woods. Each unanswered call deepened the knot of fear in my stomach, solidifying the chilling realization that this was no ordinary disappearance. Something profound, something terrifying had happened. Here, and Gary was gone. Driven by a desperate hope, I expanded my search beyond the immediate campsite, venturing deeper into the surrounding woods, my calls for Gary growing increasingly frantic and strained. It was then, just beyond the edge of our clearing, that I saw it, a patch of scorched earth, a perfect circle of blackened soil amidst the vibrant green undergrowth. The smell of burnt ozone hung heavy in the air, acrid and unnatural, a stark contrast to the fresh scent of pine and damp earth that permeated the rest of the forest. This wasn't campfire ash. This was something else entirely. The circle was too perfect, too clean, the earth beneath it baked hard and lifeless. A cold dread washed over me, replacing the initial panic with a chilling certainty that this was connected to the silent black triangle, the blinding light, the lost hours of the night. This scorched circle was a brand, a mark left by something, not of this world, a silent testament to an event far more sinister than a simple camping mishap. My blood ran cold. Gary hadn't just wandered off. He hadn't simply gotten lost. Something had taken him. The scorched earth was a sign, an undeniable clue that whatever had occurred here was not natural, not explainable by any earthly logic. The idyllic wilderness had revealed its terrifying underbelly, a place where the laws of nature were bent and broken by forces beyond human comprehension. The urgency shifted from finding Gary to understanding what had taken him. The woods, once a place of solace, now felt like a crime scene, holding secrets I desperately needed to uncover. Calling out his name was no longer enough. I had to find answers, to understand the meaning of the scorched circle, to unravel the mystery of the black triangle, and to confront the terrifying possibility that Gary was caught in something far more dangerous and inexplicable than I could have ever imagined. My escape into the wilderness had become a desperate plunge into the unknown, and finding Gary was no longer just a hope, but a terrifying necessity. The scorched circle became my focal point, a horrifying focal point. I circled it cautiously, my mind racing, trying to make sense of the impossible. Touching the blackened earth sent a jolt of unease through me. It felt sterile, dead, devoid of any natural energy. The air around it shimmered slightly, distorting the sunlight in a way that made my head spin. This was not just a disappearance, this was an event, a violation of the natural order, and Gary was caught in the middle of it. My initial goal of simply finding Gary warped into something far more complex and terrifying. I wasn't just looking for a lost friend anymore. I was potentially searching for someone taken by something alien, something unknown and hostile. The wilderness, my supposed escape, now felt like a trap, isolating me miles from help, miles from anyone who would believe what I was starting to suspect. My phone had no signal, my supplies were limited, and the daylight hours were ticking away. The immediate challenge became survival, not just in the physical sense, but mentally. How could I navigate this impossible reality? How could I even begin to search for Gary when I had no idea what I was searching for? The fear was paralyzing, but beneath it, a flicker of resolve ignited. I owed it to Gary to try, to understand, to fight back against whatever had taken him, even if it meant confronting the unimaginable. My motivation deepened. It wasn't just about friendship anymore. It was about truth. About understanding the nature of this terrifying encounter, about reclaiming some semblance of control in a situation that felt utterly beyond my grasp. The fear of the unknown was immense, but the fear of not knowing, of remaining a helpless victim, was even greater. I had to move forward, to investigate, to follow whatever faint trail the scorched earth and the lingering scent of ozone might offer, even if it led me further into the heart of this unfolding nightmare. Driven by a primal need to understand, I began to follow a faint trail leading away from the scorched circle, a subtle disturbance in the undergrowth, as if something heavy had been dragged. The forest seemed to close in around me, the shadows deepening even as the sun climbed higher, the silence amplifying the frantic beating of my own heart. Every snapping twig, every rustle in the leaves sent jolts of adrenaline through me, my senses hyper-alert, straining to discern friend from foe, real threat from imagined terror. Was I being watched? Were they still here? The questions echoed in my mind, unanswered and terrifying. The physical exertion of trekking through the dense undergrowth began to take its toll. Exhaustion gnawed at me, hunger pangs twisted in my stomach, and the throbbing headache intensified. A constant reminder of the night's trauma. My water supply was dwindling, daylight hours were finite, and the chilling realization that I was utterly alone in this vast wilderness, facing an enemy I couldn't even comprehend, began to sink in with crushing weight. The stakes were escalating rapidly. Survival itself was becoming a challenge, secondary only to the desperate need to find Gary and unravel the truth. As I pressed onward, I stumbled upon another anomaly near the trail, A small, metallic object glinting in the dappled sunlight, half buried in the leaves. It was smooth, cold to the touch, and strangely geometric, radiating an unsettlingly artificial aura. Picking it up, a jolt of recognition shot through me. It was the same material as the object I vaguely remembered seeing in the alien room, the same cold alien metal. This wasn't just a random object. It was a piece of them, a tangible link to the abduction, and a chilling indication that their presence was still lingering, perhaps even watching me. A dilemma crystallized in my mind. Continue searching for Gary blindly, or try to understand them first, to decipher the meaning of the scorched circle, the metallic object, the fragmented memories of the abduction. Each path held its own dangers, its own uncertainties. Continuing to search for Gary without any real clue felt futile, potentially leading me deeper into danger, while focusing on the alien mystery might mean abandoning Gary to his fate. The tension tightened, a vice around my chest, forcing me to confront a terrible choice with no clear right answer, and the clock ticking relentlessly onward. Clutching the metallic fragment, a chilling resolve hardened within me. Blindly stumbling through the woods was futile. I needed information, understanding. The object, the scorched earth, these were clues, fragments of a terrifying puzzle. Turning away from the direction I'd been blindly searching, I decided to backtrack to the scorched circle, to examine it more closely, to try and decipher its secrets. This shift in direction felt less like giving up on Gary, and more like equipping myself to actually help him, to understand what we were dealing with before plunging further into the unknown. This was no longer just a desperate search, it was a terrifying investigation. Returning to the scorched earth, a new detail became apparent. Barely visible in the harsh sunlight, etched into the blackened soil, were symbols. Intricate, geometric markings that I hadn't noticed before in my initial panic. They were unlike any language or script I'd ever seen, radiating an alien complexity that sent shivers down my spine. As I traced the symbols with a trembling finger, a jolt, not unlike static electricity, pulsed through me, and fragmented images flooded my mind. Fleeting glimpses of the cold metal room, the black eyes, and a sense of vast, unknowable intelligence. The symbols were a key, a communication, a terrifying invitation deeper into their world. In that moment, the search for Gary became inextricably linked with understanding these symbols, with confronting the chilling reality that we were not just victims, but perhaps subjects of something far grander and far more terrifying than we could possibly imagine. The climax was no longer just about rescue, but about revelation. The symbols pulsed with an inner light, almost imperceptible, but visible in the deepening twilight as the afternoon waned. They seemed to shift and writhe beneath my gaze, not physically moving, but somehow. The more I stared, the more the forest around me seemed to fade, replaced by an encroaching sense of otherness. A feeling of being drawn into a space that existed beyond the familiar boundaries of my reality. A chilling premonition settled upon me. These symbols weren't just a message, they were a gateway. As I meticulously copied the symbols onto a scrap of paper, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing the last embers of our campfire and sending a flurry of leaves swirling around me. It felt intentional, almost theatrical, as if some unseen force was reacting to my actions, acknowledging my intrusion into their alien language. The air grew colder, a preternatural chill that had nothing to do with the descending evening, raising goosebumps on my arms and sending a fresh wave of fear washing over me. I was being warned, or perhaps guided. A subtle shift in the forest's ambiance became undeniable. The usual sounds of the wilderness, the chirping of crickets, the rustling of nocturnal creatures, abruptly ceased, replaced by an unnerving silence, heavier and more oppressive than before. It was as if the natural world itself was holding its breath, anticipating something momentous, something terrifying. The feeling of being watched intensified, not from a specific point, but from everywhere at once, an invisible presence pressing in from all sides, a suffocating blanket of alien awareness. Suddenly, a single, piercingly bright star appeared, directly overhead, brighter than any star I had ever seen, pulsing with an intense white light that seemed to bore into my skull. It was a focal point in the darkening sky, drawing my gaze upwards, commanding my attention. This wasn't a star, it was them. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing my breath and freezing me to the spot. The symbols, the wind, the silence, the star. It was all orchestrated, a carefully constructed prelude to something imminent, something unavoidable. A low hum, almost infrasonic, began to vibrate through the ground, growing steadily louder, resonating deep within my chest, echoing the frantic rhythm of my heart. The air crackled with unseen energy, the metallic tang of ozone intensifying, mirroring the scent from the scorched circle. The stage was set, the pieces were in place, and the terrifying climax of this alien encounter was about to unfold. I was no longer just searching for Gary. I was being drawn into their world, willingly or not, and the answers, whatever they may be, were about to be revealed in a way I could never have anticipated. The humming intensified, morphing into a deep, resonant drone that vibrated through the very ground beneath my feet, making my teeth chatter and my vision blur. The star above pulsed faster, brighter, casting an eerie white light that washed out the remaining colors of the twilight, turning the forest into a monochrome landscape of stark shadows and blinding highlights. Fear, raw and primal, threatened to overwhelm me, to shatter my resolve and leave me paralyzed by terror. But beneath the fear, a strange sense of fatalism took root. Resistance felt futile. I was caught in their web, drawn inexorably towards whatever awaited me. My breath hitched in my chest, each inhale ragged and shallow as the forest around me began to shift. The trees seemed to sway and bend, not from wind, but from some unseen force, their silhouettes distorting against the pulsating white light from above. Shadows lengthened and writhed, taking on menacing shapes, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. The metallic fragment I held in my hand grew warm, almost burning, as if reacting to the escalating energy in the air, a physical conduit to the alien presence. My senses were overloaded, my mind teetering on the edge of panic. But I clung to the image of Gary, to the desperate hope of finding him, forcing myself to remain grounded, to face whatever was coming. The narrative threads converged with terrifying clarity. The symbols were a beacon, the scorched earth a landing site, the silence a prelude, and the pulsating star. They were returning. This wasn't just about a random abduction. It was a targeted event, a deliberate act with consequences I was only beginning to grasp. My personal ordeal, Gary's disappearance, the alien symbols, all were inextricably linked, strands of a terrifying tapestry woven by forces beyond human. Understanding. The final challenge was not just to survive, but to understand. To confront the beings who had invaded our lives, to find Gary, and to somehow navigate the terrifying climax of this encounter without losing my mind or my soul in the process. The moment of truth was upon me, and the wilderness held its breath, waiting to witness what would unfold. The pulsating star descended, no longer a distant point of light, but a massive luminous orb that filled the sky, eclipsing the stars and bathing the clearing in an ethereal, otherworldly glow. From its underside, a beam of light, identical to the one before, shot downwards, bathing the scorched circle and me in its cold, incandescent embrace. But this time, I wasn't paralyzed. Armed with the knowledge of the symbols, the metallic fragment clutched tight in my hand. A sliver of defiance sparked within the terror. I focused on the symbols, picturing them in my mind, channeling my will, my fear, my desperate plea for Gary into their alien geometry. A wave of nausea hit me, followed by a searing pain in my head, as if my skull was cracking open. Images flooded. My mind chaotic and overwhelming, swirling galaxies, alien landscapes, and glimpses of Gary, not on a cold metal table, but elsewhere, in a place that defied earthly description, a place of light and sound, seemingly unharmed but distant, unreachable. Then a presence vast and ancient filled my consciousness, not through words but through pure thought, emotion, a sense of immense detached curiosity. Understanding. That was what they sought. Not dissection, not harm, but understanding of us, of consciousness, of the human spirit. The beam intensified, the pressure mounting, threatening to crush me, but I held my ground, focusing on Gary, on the need to bring him back. And then, as abruptly as it began, the pressure released. The light retracted, the humming subsided, and the luminous orb ascended, vanishing into the night sky as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only silence, the lingering scent of ozone, and the faint echo of alien presence. In the clearing, slumped against a tree, disoriented but breathing, was Gary. He was back. The climax was not a battle, but an exchange, a terrifying communion with the unknown. Now, we had to understand what it meant, what we had been shown, and what our lives would become after this night. What will you do with understanding? The silent question echoed in the sudden silence of the forest, a challenge hanging heavy in the air, urging us, the audience, to consider the implications of what we had just witnessed. The drive back was silent, heavy with unspoken understanding. Gary, though physically present, was distant, lost in his own silent processing of the unimaginable. We returned to our lives, to college, to the mundane routines. But the world looked different, felt different, tinged with the unsettling awareness of a reality far larger and stranger than we had ever conceived. The wilderness, once a symbol of escape, now echoed with the chilling silence of the unknown, a constant reminder of our vulnerability in a cosmos teeming with unseen forces. We carried the weight of our shared experience, a bond forged in terror and wonder, forever marked by a night that defied explanation and challenged the very fabric of our understanding. We had returned, but something fundamental within us had shifted, leaving us forever changed by the encounter. Years passed, the memory of the abduction fading into the background noise of daily life, yet never truly disappearing. The implant became a physical scar, a tangible reminder of the impossible. We learned to live with the questions, the uncertainties, the chilling knowledge that we were not alone, and perhaps not even in control of our own destinies in the grand cosmic tapestry. The wilderness still called to us, but now with a different tone, a blend of fear and fascination, a constant pull towards the edge of the known. Our lives continued, shaped by the echoes of that night, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown to transform us, to challenge our perceptions, and to leave us forever wondering what else lies hidden just beyond the veil of our everyday reality. Consider your own world, your own assumptions. Look up at the night sky. What do you truly believe is out there? If you're enjoying this and want to support the channel in bringing more chilling stories like this, any contribution is greatly appreciated. The donation link is just below this video. It's safe, easy, and fast. No registration required. Even the smallest support means so much. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Third story. Moscow, 1997. Alien abduction cover-up revealed. Moscow, 1997. The weight of a nation in transition pressed down even within the supposed sanctuary of my apartment. Beyond the thick curtains, the city hummed with a restless energy, a mix of hope and anxiety mirroring the uncertain times. Inside, I sought refuge in the quiet stillness, a rare moment of solitude amidst the relentless demands of public life. The chess pieces on the board stood frozen mid-game, a silent testament to a contest momentarily paused, a metaphor I perhaps should have heeded more closely. It began subtly, a shift in the air, an almost imperceptible hum that resonated not in my ears, but deeper within my bones. Then the light, not the harsh glare of city lamps filtering through the window, but something altogether different. An intense, golden luminescence that bloomed in the room, seemingly from nowhere and everywhere at once. One moment, I was contemplating my next move across the checkered battlefield. The next, the familiar contours of my study dissolved into an incandescent ocean. Panic flared, a cold spike of primal fear jolting me from my contemplative state. Disorientation seized me as the golden light intensified, swallowing all sense of space and time. There was no sound, no smell, only this overwhelming, all-consuming brilliance that felt both terrifying and strangely beckoning. Then, a sensation of movement, not physical locomotion, but a displacement of reality itself, a sensation of being pulled, stretched, transported beyond the boundaries of my known world. When awareness returned, the golden light had softened, revealing a space utterly alien, yet somehow ordered. Figures moved in my periphery, tall, slender forms clad in shimmering yellow. Their presence was both unsettling and undeniably powerful. No words were spoken, yet understanding flowed. Thoughts and images conveyed directly into my mind, painting vistas of unimaginable cosmic scale and complexity. In that moment, I ceased to be Kirsan Ilyumzhinov, politician, chess enthusiast, man of Russia. I became something else, a witness to a reality far beyond human comprehension. And then, just as abruptly, I was back. The golden light receding, leaving me trembling in the familiar dimness of my study, the chess pieces still waiting, the game forever altered. Silence would have been the easier path, but silence, I knew, instantly, was no longer an option. The year is 1997. Moscow, a city still shaking off the remnants of the Soviet era, pulsates with a nervous energy. Beneath the veneer of burgeoning capitalism and newfound freedoms lies a deep societal unease, a sense of disorientation as the familiar structures crumble and the future remains uncertain. Kirsan Ilyumzhinov, a figure both enigmatic and prominent in this shifting landscape, embodies this duality. As the president of Kalmykia, a small, often overlooked republic within Russia, he is a man accustomed to the complexities of power, political maneuvering, and the weight of leadership. But beneath the public persona of a politician, Kirsan harbors a rich inner life, a deep fascination with the strategic intricacies of chess, a game he sees as a microcosm of the larger cosmic dance of forces. This intellectual curiosity, this thirst for understanding patterns and hidden meanings sets him apart, making him receptive to realities beyond the mundane. His apartment, a sanctuary of quiet contemplation amidst the political storms, reflects this inner world. Bookshelves overflowing with volumes on history, philosophy, and, of course, chess theory, alongside artifacts collected from his travels, each holding a story, a whisper of different cultures and perspectives. The beings themselves remain shrouded in mystery. Tall and ethereal, they are beings of light and presence more than physical form. Their yellow suits, seemingly organic and seamless, hint at an advanced technology, or perhaps something beyond technology as we understand it. Their most striking feature is their silence, a stark contrast to human communication, yet within this silence lies a profound and unsettling form of understanding. They communicate not through sound waves and spoken words, but through a direct, almost invasive transfer of thought, bypassing the limitations of language and culture. Their motivations are initially inscrutable. Are they observers, researchers, or do they have a more specific purpose in choosing Kirsan, a relatively obscure political figure in the vast tapestry of human history? This ambiguity is itself a source of creeping horror, the unsettling feeling of being examined, analyzed, perhaps even manipulated by forces beyond comprehension. Kirsan, thrust into this alien encounter, is not a soldier or a scientist, but a politician, a strategist accustomed to human interactions, suddenly confronted with something utterly, terrifyingly non-human. His initial motivation, born from a sense of profound awe and unsettling responsibility, is simple: to share what he has witnessed, to break through the wall of human complacency and alert the world to a reality far grander and far more unsettling than we could ever imagine. The silence that followed my return was more deafening than any sound. They showed me wonders, yes, but also hinted at Earth's fragile place, a cosmic chessboard where humanity are unwitting pawns. Telling my truth unleashed not understanding, but laughter, scorn. Yet their parting message echoed: observe, remember. The abduction was not random. It was a message, and the universe I now knew held secrets darker than any government conspiracy. My goal became clear: to make them believe, not for personal validation, but for the sake of humanity. The universe I had glimpsed was too important, too awe-inspiring and terrifying to remain hidden, dismissed as a delusion. My first obstacle was, predictably, disbelief. Dmitri, my closest confidant, saw only stress and delusion, a medical concern to be addressed, not a cosmic revelation to be heeded. His pity stung more than outright scorn. It was the dismissal of my sanity from someone who knew me best. My public pronouncements were met with derision, as expected. The media circus descended, painting me as a madman, a political joke, cartoons and caricatures mocked my experience, reducing a profound, life-altering event to cheap entertainment. Politically, it was disastrous. Whispers of instability and mental imbalance circulated, threatening my position, my influence, everything I had worked for. This was the first true obstacle, the wall of human skepticism, reinforced by media sensationalism and political maneuvering. Yet, amidst the ridicule, a flicker of resolve ignited. I would not be silenced. I began documenting everything, meticulously recording every detail of the abduction, every sensation, every vision, every fragment of communication. This journal became my anchor, my proof, a tangible record of my truth in a world determined to deny it. Simultaneously, I started discreetly researching, seeking historical accounts of similar phenomena, looking for patterns, for any shred of corroborating evidence that could pierce through the wall of disbelief. This research led me to Dr. Elena Grigorieva, a parapsychologist working on the fringes of accepted science. Unlike others, Elena listened without judgment, her eyes alight with a different kind of curiosity, scientific inquiry, not condescending, pity. She didn't immediately believe, but she didn't dismiss me either. Her open-minded skepticism became a lifeline, a first fragile bridge across the chasm of isolation. Our conversations, though cautious and probing, sparked a new subplot. A quest for verifiable evidence, a search for a language that science might understand, a desperate attempt to translate the ineffable into something tangible, something believable. But even with Elena's tentative support, the mountain of public and professional skepticism loomed, a formidable challenge threatening to bury my truth, and perhaps humanity's future, under a landslide of laughter and denial. The inciting incident arrived not as another golden light, but as a crackle of static on the evening news. An amateur astronomer in Siberia, miles from Moscow, had captured unusual thermal anomalies in the night sky. Grainy, enhanced images flickered across the screen, patterns of heat signatures moving with impossible speed and defying conventional aircraft behavior. Experts dismissed them as weather phenomena, atmospheric distortions, or even outright fabrications. But for me, watching in stunned silence, the patterns resonated with a chilling familiarity. Elena called moments later, her voice trembling with excitement and a hint of fear. "Kirsan, did you see the Siberian images? The patterns? They match descriptions from historical accounts, from abduction reports." Her words confirmed the jolt of recognition that had seized me. This wasn't just another unexplained aerial phenomenon. This was something connected, something real. The ridicule I had endured, the public dismissal, suddenly felt less absolute, less insurmountable. Here was tangible, public evidence, however ambiguous, that chipped away at the wall of disbelief. The news segment, brief and quickly dismissed by mainstream media, ignited a spark in the fringes of the internet, in online forums dedicated to unexplained phenomena. Whispers of UFOs, alien activity, and government cover-ups began to circulate, amplified by the grainy images and the official denials. For the first time, voices other than my own were questioning the accepted narrative, daring to consider the possibility of something extraordinary happening above our heads. This fragmented, hesitant public acknowledgement, however nascent, was the crack in the dam. But with this crack came a new kind of urgency. This evidence, if not properly investigated, if not connected to my testimony, would be easily dismissed, buried under layers of scientific jargon and official pronouncements. The opportunity to break through the wall of disbelief was fleeting, fragile. We had to act to seize this moment, to amplify the whispers into a roar before the window of opportunity slammed shut. My goal shifted, intensified. It was no longer just about telling my story. It was about proving it, about forcing the world to confront the reality I had glimpsed, the reality now hinted at in the Siberian skies. And that meant taking action, stepping out of the shadows of ridicule and into the blinding glare of public scrutiny, armed with nothing but my truth and the fragile hope that someone, somewhere, would finally listen. The Siberian anomaly, while providing a flicker of validation, ignited a firestorm of official denial. The Russian government, initially dismissive, now actively downplayed the event, attributing the thermal signatures to experimental military exercises, weather balloons, anything but extraterrestrial activity. This orchestrated campaign of disinformation became a new, formidable challenge. The media, once gleefully mocking, now shifted tone, echoing official statements, effectively shutting down any serious discussion. The window of fragile hope seemed to be closing as quickly as it had opened. This official pushback solidified my resolve. It wasn't just disbelief I was facing, it was active suppression, a deliberate attempt to bury the truth. My motivation deepened beyond mere disclosure. It became a fight against orchestrated deception, a David versus Goliath battle against powerful forces determined to control the narrative. Elena, emboldened by the Siberian reports and angered by the government's blatant denial, became a more active partner. Her scientific background, her access to academic networks, became invaluable in navigating the labyrinth of official obfuscation. Into this escalating conflict stepped Colonel Dmitry Volkov, a shadowy figure from a government intelligence agency. Volkov contacted me discreetly, initially presenting himself as a sympathetic listener, someone within the system who believed my story and was concerned about the official cover-up. His demeanor was intense, probing, his questions sharp and focused. He offered resources, access to classified information, hinting at a deeper government knowledge of extraterrestrial phenomena, a secret history buried beneath layers of denial. But his eyes held a calculating glint, a subtle undercurrent of something else. Volkov's introduction opened a new, dangerous subplot. Was he truly an ally, a whistleblower within the system, or was he part of the very machinery of deception, sent to monitor me, to control the narrative, perhaps even to silence me permanently? The setting expanded beyond my apartment and Elena's lab, into the murky world of government secrets, clandestine meetings in dimly lit cafes, hushed phone calls in the dead of night. The once clear conflict against public disbelief now morphed into a shadowy game of cat and mouse, a terrifying dance with unseen forces where the stakes were not just my credibility, but perhaps my very life. And the ever-present feeling of being watched intensified, no longer just a paranoia but a chilling certainty that eyes, both human and perhaps otherwise, were fixed upon me, waiting for my next move. Volkov's information, initially promising, proved to be a double-edged sword. Classified documents he provided hinted at decades of government awareness of extraterrestrial encounters, corroborating my own experience in chilling detail. Yet, they also revealed a ruthless strategy of suppression, disinformation, and control, painting a terrifying picture of a government operating in the shadows, manipulating public perception. Trust in Volkov became a dangerous gamble. Was he genuinely helping or leading me deeper into a government trap? Elena, wary of official involvement, urged caution, creating friction between us. The stakes escalated dramatically when anonymous threats began. Veiled warnings to drop my quest for the truth, escalating to more direct and menacing encounters, whispers in the dark near-miss car accidents. My political career, already damaged, crumbled further as orchestrated leaks and accusations painted me as unstable, a liability to the nation. The subplots of public ridicule, government cover-up, and the ambiguous Volkov alliance twisted together, forming a tightening noose around me. Every step forward in seeking the truth felt like stepping further into a minefield. The tension mounting with each coded message from Volkov, each dismissive press release from the government, each chilling reminder that we were being watched, our every move scrutinized by unseen eyes, both terrestrial and perhaps extraterrestrial. The dilemma was stark. Retreat into silence and safety, or push further, risking everything to expose a truth the world seemed determined to deny. The turning point arrived in the form of a coded message from Volkov, a clandestine meeting at an abandoned observatory outside Moscow. There, amidst the decaying instruments pointed uselessly at the night sky, Volkov revealed his true colors. He wasn't a whistleblower, but a disillusioned operative, weary of the lies and the burden of secrecy. He confessed the government's deep, decades-long knowledge of the extraterrestrial presence, not just passive observation, but active, albeit clandestine, interaction. The Siberian anomaly, he admitted, was not accidental. It was a deliberate, controlled leak. A calculated move by factions within the government seeking to subtly prepare the public for eventual disclosure, or perhaps something more sinister. This revelation shattered my understanding of the game. It wasn't about convincing the world. It was about navigating a treacherous landscape of internal government factions, each with their own agenda regarding the extraterrestrial reality. The laughter and ridicule, the media manipulation, the threats, they were not just about suppressing me, but about controlling the narrative, shaping public perception for a purpose I couldn't yet fully grasp. Fear mingled with a new sense of grim determination. My journey was no longer just about telling my truth. It was about choosing a side in a hidden war, a cosmic chess game played out in the shadows of human power structures. Elena, witnessing my transformation, hardened her resolve too. The naive hope of scientific validation faded, replaced by a steely pragmatism, a readiness to fight for the truth, whatever the cost. The observatory, once a symbol of humanity's yearning to understand the cosmos, became the staging ground for a final desperate gamble, a confrontation with forces far more complex and dangerous than I had ever imagined, with the climax looming, dark and uncertain on the horizon. Volkov's revelation reframed everything. The enemy wasn't just public disbelief, it was a clandestine power struggle within the very structures meant to protect us. Elena, initially reeling from the implications of Volkov's confession, quickly shifted into strategic mode. If they are controlling the narrative, she reasoned, we need to seize control of a piece of it ourselves. Our plan became audacious, bordering on reckless, to use the government's own carefully orchestrated leak, the Siberian anomaly, against them. We decided to leak Volkov's classified documents, selectively, strategically, to independent journalists and online news outlets beyond government control. It was a dangerous gamble, a direct defiance of the forces we now knew were arrayed against us. The first minor confrontation came swiftly, a digital ghost in the machine. Our communications were monitored, our online accounts compromised. Our attempts to disseminate information met with immediate and sophisticated countermeasures. We were playing a high-stakes game of digital cat and mouse, constantly shifting our methods, using encrypted channels and burner phones, always one step ahead, or so we hoped, of our pursuers. A surprising tentative alliance emerged from an unexpected quarter. Dmitri, witnessing the escalating pressure, the undeniable evidence of government interference, and perhaps sensing a genuine danger to me, began to waver in his skepticism. He contacted me hesitantly, offering not belief in the aliens, but help in navigating the treacherous political landscape. His engineering skills proving unexpectedly useful in circumventing surveillance and securing our communications. It was a fragile truce, a hesitant step towards reconciliation. But in this increasingly isolated battle, any ally, even a skeptical one, was invaluable. Subtle signs, almost imperceptible shifts in the atmosphere, began to foreshadow something larger, something imminent. The feeling of being watched intensified, not with menace, but with a sense of anticipation. Flickering lights in the periphery, static on the radio, a recurring pattern in the city's electrical grid. These anomalies, barely noticeable to the untrained eye, spoke to me of a presence drawing closer, a stage being set for a confrontation on a scale far beyond human comprehension. A minor victory arrived in the form of a small online news site, brave enough, or perhaps reckless enough, to publish excerpts from the leaked documents. It was a ripple in the ocean of denial, a fragile seed of doubt planted in the public consciousness. But it was enough. It was a signal, both to those who sought to control the narrative and to whatever forces were orchestrating the larger cosmic game. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the climax, whatever terrifying or transformative form it might take, was undeniably inexorably approaching. The online leak triggered a furious response. The government backlash was swift and brutal. Elena's lab was raided, her equipment seized, her career effectively destroyed. I was placed under house arrest, my apartment transformed into a gilded cage, every phone call monitored, every visitor scrutinized. Volkov vanished, leaving behind only a cryptic message. They are accelerating the timeline. The they remained chillingly ambiguous. The government factions, the extraterrestrials, or both, intertwined in a dance of deception and control. Dmitri, now fully committed to our cause, became my lifeline, a clandestine conduit to the outside world, risking his own freedom to help us. But even his resolve was strained under the relentless pressure. Fear became a constant companion, a suffocating presence in the air, thicker than the Moscow smog. The emotional stakes soared. Elena and I, united against a common enemy, faced the very real possibility of imprisonment or worse. The weight of responsibility for potentially unleashing chaos upon the world pressed down on me, a crushing burden of guilt and fear. The subtle anomalies intensified, no longer subtle at all. Power outages flickered across the city. Communication networks sputtered and died. Strange lights danced in the sky, bolder, more visible now, no longer easily dismissed. Panic began to simmer beneath the surface of public denial, cracks appearing in the facade of normalcy. The narrative threads converged, The public skepticism challenged by undeniable events, the government cover-up crumbling under the weight of leaked truths and escalating phenomena, and the alien presence becoming increasingly palpable, the feeling of imminence growing with each passing hour. The chessboard was set for the final move, the climax approaching like a gathering storm, promising either revelation or annihilation, and we, the unwitting players, were trapped in its path, bracing for impact, hearts pounding in the face of the unknown. Then, the golden light returned, not just in my apartment but across Moscow, across Russia, reports flooding in of skies ablaze with an unearthly luminescence. This time, there was no abduction, no silent journey through the cosmos, but a presence undeniable, overwhelming, blanketing the world in a golden dawn that defied explanation. The government's carefully constructed wall of denial crumbled instantly. Panic erupted, then awe, then a desperate global plea for understanding. My house arrest became irrelevant. The world was at a standstill, waiting, watching. Elena, freed, amidst the chaos, stood beside me. Her initial fear replaced by a fierce, almost triumphant calm. Dmitri, witnessing the impossible made real, finally understood, his skepticism dissolving into a profound, almost reverent silence. The confrontation wasn't with governments or conspiracies, but with the vast, indifferent universe itself, made suddenly, terrifyingly present. The beings did not reappear in physical form, but their message resonated across the globe, a silent, undeniable truth. Humanity was not alone, and the cosmos was far grander and stranger than we had ever dared to imagine. The climax was not an explosion but a revelation, a shattering of illusions. The world changed that day, irrevocably. The laughter stopped. The ridicule turned to stunned silence, then to a hesitant collective gasp of understanding. The thematic closure was stark. Humanity's self-imposed limitations had been broken. The universe had knocked on our door, and we could no longer pretend to be alone in the dark. The future remained uncertain, fraught with both peril and unimaginable potential. But one thing was clear, the silence was broken. Now the question remains, what will humanity do with this truth? Will we succumb to fear and division, or will we rise to the challenge, embrace the unknown, and reach for the stars together? The answer, my friends, lies not in governments or leaders, but in each of you. Look up. Question everything. Dare to believe in the impossible. The universe is waiting. Are we ready to answer? The immediate aftermath was a world transformed. The golden light receded, but the memory lingered, etched into the collective consciousness of humanity. Governments, stripped bare of their carefully constructed veils of denial, scrambled to adapt, to manage the global awakening. Fear and wonder warred in the public discourse, but the laughter had definitively ceased. For me, the ridicule faded, replaced by a strange sort of weary respect. My political career remained in ruins, but my purpose had been served. I'd spoken my truth, and the universe had roared its agreement. Elena, vindicated but weary, dedicated her life to the study of extraterrestrial phenomena, becoming a reluctant leader in a field suddenly thrust into the mainstream. Dmitri, forever changed by the events, became a quiet advocate, using his skills to build bridges of understanding, both technological and human. We remained bound by our shared experience, a small island of certainty in a sea of global upheaval. forever marked by the golden light and the silent communication. The moral lesson, etched in the aftermath, was stark. Humanity's greatest fear is not the unknown, but the fear of admitting we are small, that we are part of something vast and incomprehensible. The epilogue is not one of easy answers or triumphant victory. The beings did not return with grand pronouncements or solutions. They simply revealed themselves, forcing humanity to confront its own limited perspective. Whether this encounter will lead to salvation or destruction remains unwritten, but the possibility, the sheer, terrifying, exhilarating possibility of a future intertwined with the cosmos, now hangs heavy in the air, a constant reminder that our destiny is no longer solely our own. So look to the stars, not with fear, but with a courageous, open heart. The universe has spoken. It is time for humanity to listen, to learn, and to finally, truly begin to grow up. So, what did you think of this story? Did it scare you? Was there a part that gave you chills or stuck with you the most? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. If you've had a similar experience or have suggestions for improving future videos, let me know too. Thank you for watching and being part of this amazing community. See you in the next story.